Welcome to session 3 of 4 Keys to a Better Night's Sleep. I'm your host, Coach Bobby G. And in this episode, we are going to answer the question, are you getting enough sleep? Then do this. One of the things that I often ask any client or potential client is really, are you getting enough sleep? And, you know, they maybe have a textbook answer. They might say, well, yeah, I'm getting about 6 hours of sleep every night or whatever the case may be. And then I say, well, that's one way to look at it, but let's answer this question. How do you feel when you wake up in the morning? Do you feel so rested that you don't need to have a cup of coffee? Operative word, need. You don't need to have a cup of coffee. You don't need to have a nice sugary buttermilk or glazed donut, right? If you wake up in the morning and you have to have your cup of coffee, or you don't feel alive until you get a nice donut to go with that, chances are you might not be getting enough sleep. Now, in fact, yes, we need to be getting at least 6 hours of sleep per night. At least 6 hours of sleep per night. We want our body to go through the sleep cycle a number of times so that we clean out our brains and rebuild our immunity and repair any muscle damage or rebuild any muscle because of the exercise we've been doing. Right? So we need to get through those sleep cycles. But then what do we do, or how do we maybe get to having a good night's sleep right away? Well, I have a word. I have an answer for you. In fact, if you do this, odds are you will have a better sleep tonight or tomorrow night if you're watching this late at night. If you're watching this late at night, we'll talk about your sleep routine. Let's talk about your sleep routine. But if you are, if you do this one thing, you will have a better night's sleep, hands down. And what is that thing? Exercise. Exercise. That's the magic word. That's what you need to do if you want to get a better night's sleep. Now, you heard me mention that 6 hours, at least 6 hours. And here's really the statistic to pay close attention to. We're particularly concerned about that once we are turning 50 and beyond. We know some people who have some struggles as they get older. And some of those struggles look like dementia, Alzheimer's, things like that. And the science says this, that if you settle for fewer than 6 hours of sleep for an extended period of time, you put yourself at greater risk for Alzheimer's and dementia. And as you may have heard in another session, plaques can form in your brain up to 20 years before you see symptoms. So it's very important that we get a good night's sleep. And really, we are settling for a less than ideal amount of sleep, right? If you're like me, I struggle with FOMO, fear of missing out. So I might be swiping before I go to bed. Not good, right? So I too, as a person, have those evenings where I struggle with shutting down in the healthy way, like I recommended in session 1. All right, so let's talk about sleep and let's talk about exercise and how they work together. But to do that, I need to set the stage. In 2013, the National Sleep Foundation surveyed about 1,000 people. And in surveying these 1,000 people, they divided them into 4 categories. 4 categories of people in this survey. And those categories were, and these categories were based on their amount of activity, because we're trying to find out if there's a role between exercise and sleep, and if so, what kind of role or might be at play. So 4 categories: no activity, light activity or light exercise, moderate activity, moderate exercise, and then vigorous, right? So we go from no to vigorous, right? And we want to see if there is any correlation. Now, to give you an idea as to how many people fit in those categories, according to their survey in 2013, people who identified as themselves as no activity, and these are people who probably maybe walked around the house. They weren't necessarily totally couch potatoes. They didn't just lay in bed all day, but they didn't do anything that might be considered an exercise or something like that, right? 9%, right? Fewer than 10% of the people in that survey were no activity kinds of people, all right? Next level, light activity, 48%. So 48% of people said that they did a fair amount of walking, right? Walking was a good example of light activity. Not putting down walking, but it's a light activity, all right? Then the next category, moderate activity, 25% of those surveyed would participated in activities like yoga, Tai Chi, and some weightlifting. Yoga, Tai Chi, and some weightlifting, all right? And you might think of weightlifting as vigorous, but weightlifting, I'm like, I grunt for 5 seconds or 3 seconds or 2 seconds, and then I put it down. Or if I'm doing a series of reps, I do 12 reps, and then I recover, depending on your style of exercise and weightlifting, right? So it's really considered moderate. 25%, and then the final category, vigorous exercise, would be 18%. Now, examples of vigorous exercise, according to this survey, was running, right? If you went out and ran 2-3 miles a day, cycling, right? Cycling for multiple minutes, maybe half hour, 45 minutes, and then swimming or competitive sports, right? And maybe the training that goes along with those competitive sports. All right. So here's what the results said. All right. Here's what the results said. Those who exercised said, quote, I had a good night's sleep on both work and non-work nights. Those who exercise. So 75% of those who were exercisers reported a good or a fairly good night's sleep. However, only 50% of those who were non-exercisers reported having a good night's sleep. So even some of those in the no activity area reported that they had a good night's sleep, but it was like 50% of them, right? Not a very high percentage. Now, the vigorous group, they said they had the best sleep. They were twice as likely as the non-exerciser to say they had good sleep, and they would say they had a good sleep 7 or almost 7 nights a week. And they were the group that had the least reported sleep issues, right? No concerns, or fewest concerns there. Now, the non-exercisers, keep this in mind, the non-exercisers are the sleepiest, were the sleepiest, or the highest at risk of sleep apnea. Now, if you're not familiar with sleep apnea is that condition where you stop breathing while you're sleeping, and you pause. And unless you do a sleep study, you're not going to know for sure, but you'll know that you're tired a lot, right? You'll know you're tired a lot. And so typically you have to get a CPAP machine or something like that, and that constant pressure, airflow, and it just makes sure it keeps the air going in and out, helps you breathe, right? To make sure you don't stop yourself from breathing, right? Stop breathing. So non-exercisers were the highest group to be the sleepiest and at risk for sleep apnea. 25% of those non-exercisers would qualify as sleepy, and only 12% of the exercisers qualified as sleepy. Okay, so just as a general condition, and then 44% of the non-exercisers were at risk or at moderate risk, for sleep apnea. 26% of the light exercisers were at moderate risk for sleep apnea, but only 19% of the vigorous exercisers were at risk for moderate sleep, or had a moderate risk for sleep apnea. Got to say that the right way. Okay, this is what the research says, according to National Sleep Foundation. Another interesting statistic that I found when I was considering this dialogue about exercise and a good night's sleep, it relates to another story you may have heard. There is this idea that smoking is bad for us, and we would all tend to agree that smoking is bad for us. But oh boy, I think in the mid 2010s, the mid 20-teens, there was this positioning of inactivity that it was just as bad for us, if not worse for us, than smoking. And that came out in this, and a variation of that came out in this study by the Sleep Foundation, that less sitting equals better sleep. So the more active you were in general, not just per se exercise, but if you had a job and you sat on your tailbone all day, you didn't have good sleep, or you tended to report that you didn't have as good a sleep as those who did not sit for 8 hours a day, right? So just something to be thinking about there, right? And we also, I would also note that exercise at any time is going to be good exercise. There are sometimes in my sleep routines, and there's some reporting on this, that you want to have your exercise done by a certain time. But I have, in my study of the research, I have seen that where if you did intense exercise in the evening, say after supper time, you might have some physiological effects early in your sleep, but you wouldn't have disrupted sleep. Your sleep would not be disrupted, and you would be able to sleep just fine. So anytime you want to get some exercise, just get some exercise. So the question might be then, what kinds of exercise would you want to be getting, right? I mean, if exercise is good, and if I exercise today, I will sleep much better tonight, what kind of exercise? And before I answer that question, I want to tell you a story. I was in a conversation with a client, and the client was saying that they had a hard time going to sleep. And I said, well, tell me about your activity level. And so they said, well, you know, I swim a couple days a week. And I said, what does that swimming look like? You know, I jump in the pool and I go and I turn my, kind of zone out and I do my thing, going back and forth. Okay. And I'll do it for, I think it was like half hour, 30 minutes or whatever at a time. Right. And then, so that was a couple days a week. And then a few on the other days a week, there was brisk walking, as they said, brisk walking. And they tried to include some hills. Okay, good. And then pre-pandemic, they talked about going to Pilates. But they also talked about going to Pilates, and the instructor would say, okay, now you remember what you did last time where we held this position and we did this with this particular piece of equipment, and they said, actually, no, I don't. I just kind of turn my head off when I go into Pilates class, and then right. So they were confessing that they kind of zoned out when they went to exercise class, like Pilates, and when they were swimming. All right. I said, that's interesting. And then they said, you know what? When I went skiing, and they had told me, I knew they had gone skiing. I said, you know, hey, how was it when you went skiing? Well, actually, most of the nights I slept like a baby. I said, oh, interesting. So I was trying to help this client see some patterns. And so I said, hey, which would you say is more intense, the skiing or the swimming? Because I kind of had an idea where I thought that should go. And she paused for a minute and she said, I think the swimming is more intense because I go for a longer duration. You know, skiing, we just we do a run, then we go up to the hill, and we maybe rest in the lodge for a little bit, and then overall in the day we maybe only ski half the day. I said, okay, interesting. So interesting. And then I said, well, okay, so you think that the swimming is more intense? Okay, all right. So then I said, well, now, is this a single diamond, double diamond? And she goes, well, no. I'm a very good moderate skier. So that's I don't know. I think if it's 5 diamonds, then it'll be a 3 diamond or something. Or if it's 1, 2, and 3, that it'll be a double diamond skier. And it was very comfortable and stuff like that. Okay. Very, very, they're fairly accomplished skier. And then I said, because but how'd you sleep? He said, well, I slept really good after skiing. I said, it just seems to me that you can't just zone out when you go skiing. You have to be focused. And right away, yes, I have to be on edge, literally, because I'm edging. That's one of the ski terms. I'm going back and forth. I have to be focused. Even though there may not be trees nearby, I have to be really careful on how I've got to read the snow, if there's moguls and things like that. I had to be all in, right? So there was a level of intensity that they hadn't realized and taken into account. And so I suggested, hey, well, is there a way you can change up your swimming to get some maybe burst of intensity? So we're going to see that story is to be continued, and I'll be following up with them in the next few weeks. But every time, the way we exercise and what we do to exercise can indeed benefit our sleep. And so if you're wanting to know a little bit more, listen along. So if you're going to be a light exerciser, which the Department of Health recommends that we get, 5 days of 30 minutes of moderate cardio a week, right? So that means you should be walking at least 5 days out of the week. But here's my recommendation with walking. You want to make sure that you're walking at a pace that's about 100 steps a minute. So you're walking pretty briskly. You're still probably walking and being able to talk. So that kind of keeps it in the moderate or light activity, because usually just moderate cardio, if you're going to walk, if you can talk without being too out of breath, then you're doing okay. But if you're really wanting to, really challenge yourself, then 100 steps a minute is really what you're doing. If you're sauntering, it's probably not as beneficial as if you're getting up into that 80, 90, 100 steps per minute. And that's actually pretty brisk. I've tried it myself to see what that's like. And every time you want to walk for at least 20 and up to 30 minutes. So if you want to walk every day, then a 20-minute session would be fine, because then that's 140-ish minutes of walking. The recommendation is 150 over a week. And so you could do that. Or if you're going to do a 2 a day, I'll take a walk in the morning and I'll take a walk in the evening, then sure, you can do a 15 in the morning and a 15 in the evening, and then you get your 30, and you do that 5 days a week. And then on the weekends, then you could do some other kind of activity to keep yourself fit, all right, and to help your sleep. All right, so if you're going to do the light activity, if you're going to do the walking, make sure you're walking, you got good shoes, of course, to do that, but you're walking at a good pace, 100 steps a minute. Now, if you're going to do moderate exercise, yoga and Tai Chi, those are good, very good, low impact exercise modalities, I guess you would say, systems, modalities. But as we age, 50 plus, 60 plus in particular, we need to challenge our muscles because of this big word called sarcopenia. Now, sarcopenia kicks in after 60. So now I'm mindful of making sure I get strength training in, because I want to keep my muscle tone as long as possible. So I will have to challenge myself more rigorously to keep what little I have at this moment. So that means we want to lift heavy. Now, ladies, hear me out. You're not going to end up looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger just because you lift heavy. Now, you might have a little definition in your arms, right? That's not going to hurt you. And grandma and the grandbabies will really love it, right? When you do that. And if you're, wanting to get out and hike and or maybe play pickleball or whatever, you've got it, right? And you got the stamina because you're doing that. So you're doing your yoga and your Tai Chi, but you're also lifting. The recommendation is that we lift heavy at least twice a week, 2 sessions a week. I'm a big fan of actually doing strength training with cardio effect. So I'm a big fan of 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, maybe swing kettlebells or dumbbells or do something in an interval training style, and then take an active rest Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday, hard again, and then the weekend, maybe you go for a hike, walk, beach walk, do something, right? That's what I like to recommend as a general rule. So you don't have to be super intense all the time, but you do moderate intensity, but you make sure and get some strength training in. So yes, you're getting strengthened when you do yoga. There's no question. I'm not a yoga expert, so I would have a hard time holding some of those poses, right? Well, actually, most of those poses, I'd have a hard time. I'd have a hard time holding those poses. That being said, if because I want to challenge, I'm going to want to lift heavy in addition to that. So maybe if you're doing yoga a couple times a week, like on a Monday, Thursday, maybe you do your strength training on Tuesday, Friday, and then maybe you ride a bike on Wednesday, or take an extended walk on Wednesday, maybe up with some hills if you have that available to you. And sometimes if it's in the winter, it's hard to get out and want to walk outside in the winter. I understand that. So, but you figure out something that, especially if you're able to do, you can do strength training with body weight exercises actually. So, and I'll talk about that in just a little bit, but so moderate exercise, and then add the weightlifting. I would recommend that. Now, in the vigorous category, you heard me mention cycling. All right, it is lower impact. That's one way I like to cross train myself. I don't like to run. I don't. I'll talk about this in a little bit, but I don't like to run a lot. So my cross training is cycling, and then when I run, I'm running on a track to prepare myself for competing as a track and field athlete. So cycling, it's lower impact. That's a plus, but you want to vary your terrain. So if cycling is going to be your expression and you want to get your expression of fitness, that's how I like to say it. If you want to use cycling as your deal, then you're going to want to make sure you have some significant hills to deal with to get the strength, because you're pushing uphill. And as you're pushing uphill, you're strengthening. I still would recommend that you lift heavy, sometime. So maybe again, cycle on Monday. And if you're cycling to compete, then maybe it's going to look like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, get 3 days in, and then Tuesday, Thursday, do some things that are maybe heavy. They don't have to be very long, just heavy. Again, we're not trying to bulk you up. We're trying to preserve what you have for as long as possible. There's a term we use called health span, and health span gets extended when you invest in strengthening, because then that health span keeps going, and then it declines until we're no longer alive. So we want to, we put input and weight training, we extend it out, and then maybe our decline is a lot quicker, right? But it's a shorter span. All right. So that's for cycling. Running. If you're a person who likes to run, you go out and run for 3 miles, good for you. I'll pray for you as you run. That won't be me, but I run on the track, and I will do my 100 meters or my repeats, or I'll do a 300 and do 2 or 3 of those, at a certain level of intensity. But that's what I need to do to prepare myself for running on track. I swing kettlebells, so I'm doing strength training with a cardio effect. So I am getting my heart rate up, and in less than 30 minutes for sure, I can get a great workout in and be done with and be on my day, be intentional, be focused on it, and then go. But if you're going to run, make sure proper shoes, just like I would mention for walking. I like to recommend you run on grass or trails. Try and stay off the concrete. Try and stay off the asphalt as best you can when it comes to running. Now, if you're a marathoner, bless you again. So yeah, you're going to have to put that in. But whatever you can do, run on surfaces that are more conducive to you. And then if you want to look at being competitive, I like to recommend the National Senior Games as one expression of being competitive that is lifestyle oriented. I'm not as much a fan of mud runs and things like that. They have their place. They're a great challenge. Spartan races, people, they do certain things that might be in the real world, right? There might be some activities that you might have been doing in the real world. So that's a fun activity to do, but it can be really intense and grueling on your body. And I would rather reduce the risk for injury and do something that's maybe 70, 80% as intense, but you can do it for long periods of time. So that's how I train for my track and field. I'm not training to kill myself, but I am training that I can compete at a pretty good level and I'll maintain my fitness. I'll get to hang out with my peeps when we go out to the track meets, once we're able to do that again. And I can do that. And I can do that reasonably well, hopefully, right, for another 20 years. So I would love to be able to be sprinting when I'm 80. It'd be great. Even though it'll be really like walking for some of you youngsters. All right, so National Senior Games has a lot of sports. It has the track and field. So you got the short distances, you got the long mid distances, and then you have the long distances, and then you have swimming, and you have basketball, and you have volleyball, and you have golf, and you have pickleball, and you have, did I say basketball already? Yeah, basketball, and you have shot put, discus, javelin, high jump, pole vault, right? You have a variety of activities that you can do to help benefit. You have swimming, if I didn't say swimming before, right? And some years they have bowling, and bowling definitely has its place. But if you want, again, you want to do exercises or activities that challenge you regularly throughout the week, to keep your health span, to extend your health span as long as possible. All right. One thing that I didn't talk about earlier, and I'll drop this in right here before we go, and that is this idea of interval training. That's one of the things I really enjoy doing, is interval training. There's lots of different ways to interval train, but basically it's like this. In one school of thought, when you go to the gym, is you do a bunch of you might lift heavy, 3 sets of 3 or 5 sets of 5, and then you take this really long break. Then you go 4 sets of 4, and then take a break. And it's a long break, right? And then you fully recovered almost. And then you go 3 sets of 3, and then you fully recover. All right, because you're trying to do it you're trying to do it compared to your 1 rep maximum, and then you're trying to figure out what you can do. So you're always like going like maxing out or pretty close to. Well, one of the things that as a comparison, then I might say, well, why don't I take an intermediate weight and I swing it for a longer period of time? So I am going to get my muscles challenged. And because I am working for, say, 30 seconds, and then I'll take a break for 30 seconds, no matter how I'm feeling. And then I go back and I work for 30 seconds and take a break for 30 seconds. And no matter how I'm feeling, I get my next set on. Doing the exercise, the work, and doing the rest, your heart doesn't fully recover. So you're getting a cardio effect, and then your heart starts to stay up in a challenge range. It's not your max, but maybe it's 80% of your max. So it's in a great target heart rate to help burn your fat. 60 to 80%, I think, is a fat burning zone, or is it 40 to 60? I got to look that up to make sure I have that one down. But by doing work, but timing the rest and keeping it fairly consistent, whatever the protocol you use, you can keep your heart rate up. And so you're strength training with a cardio effect. So you can do that with body weight. I have made it to the National Senior Games just doing body weight. And so I qualified for that. Was I in the finals? No, I wasn't in the finals, but I wasn't. I would need to do maybe some extra sets, or I would have had to have done some greater amount of challenge in my routine. But I had a very simple routine because I wanted to make a point that you can get to that level, you know, certainly with a little bit of talent. You get to that level, and you didn't have to spend hours and hours in the gym. My workouts were definitely less than 20 minutes in terms of the strength training part. And then at some point, then we go to we have to go to the track and we have to run. So, and that was part of the holes in my training. So I wasn't as consistent on the track, and so it showed up at the national event. But I still got there, right? Okay. So interval training. I like to do a 30-30. That's where I start typically, and then we can change intensity by reducing the rest. So we can do a 30-20. And then your heart doesn't have as much time to recover, and then you're back to it, and then back to it, and then you're back to it, and then you're back to it, and then we kind of accelerate the result because we change the rest period, right? And we vary that throughout the program. All right, so that's you can do that with the body weight, and then or you can do that with swings, which I do. I'm learning kettlebells because I want to be able to swing in that 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and I can get a good workout in because I have taken the time to swing, and I'm swinging a pretty heavy weight. And in swinging that heavy weight, I'm gaining benefit. So I'm looking, I feel better. And I've just, as I'm recording this, I have just started in the last couple of weeks swinging again, because I finally have some kettlebells. And I'm feeling good about that, right? I'm looking forward, and I'm swinging in a way that I can swing, you know, for 20 years and not worry about swinging. You know, I'm not swinging for some competition, then I'll stop swinging. No, I might change modalities because I'm doing training, and I'll shoot a training set of videos based on different kinds of exercises. But for my own personal fitness, I'm swinging. That's that, because I like the efficiency of that. I get lots of benefit for not that much equipment and not that many different exercises. Okay, so that's where I'm a fan. Some people like to have 400 exercises. I don't need 400 exercises. I just need half a dozen or so, and variations maybe, right? So then maybe you're at a dozen, but then the body starts to feel confident that it can do the things that it needs to do as it goes through the modern day life of humans today. Well, I hope in this session you have gotten an idea of the importance of exercise. If you exercise with intensity any given day, you should have a better night's sleep that night. And it won't have to be hours. It really, you could do a 30 minutes or less or fewer than 30 minutes, depending on the intensity. It depends on if you're lifting heavy or whatever, and you'll sleep. You'll sleep well that night. You really will. All right. Thanks so much for joining me in this session. This is actually a re-recording because I glitched. And so if you have any questions, just make sure and email me, reply to the email that you saw for this, or you can reach out to me in the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/after50 wellness community. And I'd be happy to do my best to answer those and help you, get back to regain the strength and the stamina so you can, add years of vitality to your life, active years to your life. Yes, indeed. All righty. Take care.